as a way of ensuring that our meeting goes smoothly. Brian Hill, Aardvark Regional Planner, will serve as the host for this meeting. Thank you, Brian, once again for serving in that capacity. All participants are asked to mute themselves to improve audio quality. I think everyone has pretty much done that. And if any member wishes to make a motion, second it, or comment on a motion, please unmute yourself and ask to be recognized by me, the chair, and we'll move on to that. And then motions will be written and shared on the screen, available for all to read before the roll call. Comments by citizens will be accepted at the end of the meeting. So thank you all for that. Thank you all for coming. Christina, if you could do a roll call vote, or do the roll call, I apologize.
Okay. Mariel Fowler.
Here.
Peter Volleson.
Here.
Cody Sexton.
Here.
Dan Brew.
I'm here.
Megan Cronice.
Here.
Cecile Newcomb.
I'm sitting in for Cecile.
Thank you, Will. Chris Chittum.
I am here.
Mark Jameson.
Here.
Melinda Payne. Ben Tripp.
Here.
Joey Heiner. And we have Nathan. Are you, Nathan McClung, are you sitting in for Joey Heiner today?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anita McMillan.
Yeah.
Ron Parker.
I'm sitting in for Ron Parker.
Okay, Dorian, we're going to have to get, I guess, documentation about that for the next meeting. So you won't be able to participate in a voting capacity yet. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Tim Bradshaw. Liz Belcher. Yeah.
Here.
Great. Nathan Sanford.
Here.
Dan Sonnenklar. Michael Gray. And then our non-voting members, Kevin Jones. And our TPO chair, I believe, is on. Janet Scheid.
Yes.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. And thank you all for coming again. Thank you, Janet, for sitting in. And let's see, let me pull the agenda back up.
Mr. Chair, Michael Gray is trying to call in and is having challenges. He's texting me asking if there's something different. So he's trying to get here.
Oh, okay. All right. We will welcome him when he comes. Next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda that they need to make, or otherwise entertain a motion to
Make a motion to approve the minutes, the agenda.
That was Anita. Thank you. So Anita, motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second, Mark Jamison.
Second from Mark Jameson. A motion and a second. If there's any further discussion, Christina, roll call vote on this or acclamation?
Yes.
All right. Take it.
Okay. Mariel Fowler.
Yes.
Peter Volleson.
Yes.
Cody Sexton.
Yes.
Dan Brew.
Yes.
Megan Cronice.
Yes.
Will Crawford.
Yes.
Chris Chittum.
Yes.
Mark Jameson.
Yes.
Ben Tripp.
Yes.
Nathan McClung.
Yes.
Anita McMillan.
Yes.
Liz Belcher.
Yes.
Nathan Sanford.
Yes.
Okay, and we have the agenda approved.
Thank you very much. All right. Action number 2, action on the May 14th, 2020 TTC minutes. So everybody's had an opportunity to review them. recommended changes, amendments, otherwise have a motion to, we'll hear a motion to approve.
I just have one correction. My name listed under the voting members just has a typo. There's a D where there should be an F. Got my name right the rest of the minutes though.
That's simple enough. All right. So other than that one small technical change, would entertain a motion to approve.
Moved.
Moved as amended, Mark Jamison.
All right, Mark, motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
That sounded like Chris Chittum.
It was.
All right, motion and second. If there's no further comment on approval of the minutes, then not hearing any, Christina, will you call vote?
Okay, Mariel Fowler,
Yes.
Peter Volleson,
Yes.
Cody Sexton,
Yes.
Dan Brew,
Yes.
Megan Cronice,
Yes.
Will Crawford,
Yes.
Chris Chittum,
Yes.
Mark Jamison,
Yes.
Ben Tripp,
Yes.
Nathan McClung,
Yes.
Anita McMillan,
Yes.
Liz Belcher,
Yes.
Nathan Sanford,
Yes.
and the minutes are approved.
Thank you all for that. Great. The chairman's remarks, number 3, are fairly brief. Mainly that I didn't prepare any, other than just to say that the nominating committee has essentially concluded its work, and we will be ready to report that and for voting at the July meeting for the chairman and the vice chairman. So I'd like to thank Anita and Liz for that, and for the folks who are willing to serve. So thank you for that. And then right along to number 4. And there is some noise in the background, so please remember to mute yourself. Number 4 is going to be with Christina. Action on the STBG funding adjustment for Elizabeth Greenway and recommendation on the FY21 to 26 STBG financial plan. So Christina, take it away.
Thank you. Want to just update everybody that we were able to get public input on the new candidate projects, and that information is included in your agenda packet, and I hope you'll take a moment to read through it if you haven't already, to see what folks are saying about the projects. I also want to share that last month the board indicated their priorities and their preferred strategy for developing the 6-year financial plan, and that essentially followed the recommendations that the TTC had provided in February. Also last month, the board approved additional funding for the 4 projects that had requested additional funds to cover cost overruns this year. And the TPO also reviewed 5 out-of-cycle projects that were received for 460. We had been talking for many months about the operational improvement study that's ongoing for Route 460. And since that came after the deadline for the new candidate projects, which was last September, those went straight to the board as any out-of-cycle project would do. And they went ahead and said that they're interested in looking at committing, conditionally committing FY27 funds to support 20% of the total estimated project cost. So they'll be, those projects are out for public comment now, and then they'll be reviewing the resolution to support those projects so that they can move forward through the smart scale application process. So that'll be later this month, but there's no action from the TTC needed, just an FYI. So what we are looking for a TTC action on today, it relates to 1, the Elizabeth Greenway. Back in February, when the TTC had reviewed a number of adjustments to current projects, I had worked with the project sponsors to come up with what they were comfortable with. And VDOT had also made some assumptions about how money could get adjusted. And so Elizabeth Greenway in particular was one that VDOT was hoping could get pushed out to FY24, but City of Salem's not comfortable with that. So it was actually only able to get pushed out to FY23. So that's what's shown in the agenda packet. And then one other item that influenced the development of the FY21 through 26 financial plan is that what the TTC had approved in February for the Tinker Creek Greenway Trail Extension adjustment wasn't quite what the city had expected. And so when I went back and asked if they were okay with what the TTC had proposed, due to the COVID situation, they actually did not want to move their money at all. So that remained all in previous as opposed to getting spread out into the future. So that's the first item from your agenda packet, is to just consider the revised Salem proposal for adjusting the timing of their funds and then take action on that. And then the second part is to do the recommendation for the FY21 through 26 STBG financial plan. And in the agenda packet, I included a table which showed some information about how much each project would need for PE right-of-way construction. And that information, along with the policies in the STBG project development selection procedures, as well as the general strategy and prioritization that was approved by the board, and then project readiness, all went into the development of that draft plan. So that's for your review and discussion, and then recommendation today. So I think that's all I have to share at the moment. So there are 2 actions that we're looking for from the TTC today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Goody, Liz Belcher, I have a question.
Certainly.
So Christina, for the Elizabeth campus, in the page 8 of our packet, we show $106,168 for fiscal year 20, but on the Excel spreadsheet for the STBG, that money doesn't show up as previous allocation. Shouldn't it? So on the Elizabeth Greenway project, where we have committed 1104400, and then we have 2 numbers farther out, 1 in 21 and 1 in 23. Shouldn't we also have a number under previous allocation, the 106,168?
Yes, sorry, thank you for bringing that up, Liz. The total is shown correctly, but yes, the under previous allocation, I can show you if I do the screen share. So, yes, so Liz, I did actually notice that error, so thank you for bringing that up to everyone's attention.
Mr. Chair, just wanted to note that Michael
so
Gray
you can see
and
where the Elizabeth
Dan Sonnenklaar have joined the meeting.
Thank you. So Elizabeth Greenway is shown at $1,104,400, and next to that should be that value, the 106,168. So it does sum up with the other numbers that are in that row, just that was a value that was missing. So yes, that will be present when the board adopts it. And then sorry about the title, it should be FY21 through 26, not 20 through 25. Any other questions?
Christina, this is Mark Jamison. Just one clarification. The paragraph or the text says for 3 projects that have higher PE cost. I just want to clarify that those are the 220 Super Street, the 419 Streetscape, and the Valley Point Parkway projects. Those are the ones with $100,000 in 22?
Yes, Mark, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
And my understanding, Christina, is it's higher but higher in the sense that it couldn't all be covered in 1 year. Is that correct?
Well, pending the availability of funds in any given year.
Right, right. Okay. Any other questions, comments for Christina on this? I know when she and I talked earlier in the week about some of this stuff, it's sort of like a big puzzle trying to fit it all together.
Yes, it is.
All right, and I really thank you for all the hard work and for reaching out to all of the project sponsors, all the localities on that, and just trying to get this all together, and for aligning it with the TPO's strategic guidance. It's all kinds of moving pieces. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions for staff, happily we'll entertain a motion on, well, actually, I do need a, Christina, point of clarity. Can we do one motion on the entire fiscal plan, or do we need to do two separate, one for the Elizabeth Greenway items and then one for the plan?
If you would like to have it all included in one motion, that would be fine.
Okay. So that's what we can entertain. And for clarity, that would be a motion to recommend adoption of the fiscal plan as presented.
This is Michael. I move approval of plan as presented.
I would suggest with corrections.
Is that a second with
corrections?
Okay. So we have a motion by Michael Gray with the friendly amendment from Liz Belcher to move to approve or move to recommend approval of the financial plan with the corrections listed earlier. And Liz, was that a second for that motion?
Yeah, second.
Right, so we have a motion and a second. So Christina or Brian, are one of you all going to type that up just to have the clarity?
So the motion is to approve the funding adjustment for the Elizabeth Greenway and recommend the FY21 through 26 STBG financial plan to the policy board as presented. And well, as presented for the Elizabeth Greenway and with corrections.
Yes.
For the STBG.
All right. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns on the motion as presented? All right, hearing none, Christina, take us through a roll call.
Okay. Mariel Fowler,
Yes.
Peter Volleson,
Yes.
Cody Sexton,
Yes.
Dan Brew,
Yes.
Megan Cronice,
Yes.
Will Crawford,
Yes.
Chris Chittum,
Yes.
Mark Jameson,
Yes.
Ben Tripp,
Aye.
Nathan McClung,
Yeah.
Anita McMillan,
Yes.
Liz Belcher,
Yes.
Nathan Sanford,
Yes.
Dan Sonnenklar,
Yes.
Michael Gray,
Yes.
okay, and that passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you once again for all the work and for everyone's work leading up to this. This has been a long time coming, getting to this point, really since last September when we were first developing applications for these projects. So thank you all so much. And let's see, and pull my agenda back up. I apologize, I'm working with one screen today. All right. Number 5, consideration of the draft FY21 to 24 Transportation Improvement Program. Brian, lead us through the tip. Brian, you're on mute.
Okay, let's try that again. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the second and final reading of the consideration of the 21 to 24 TIP. As we mentioned last month and gave a brief description of what the TIP does, and the period for the federal fiscal years 21, 22, 23, and 24. We talked about the having a first public comment period, which was 15 days back in April, that consisted of an online survey, and that's, again, for your information and consideration, added as part of the staff report. 53 folks answered the survey, and then we held a second public comment opportunity, and that will conclude. It began June 3rd and it'll conclude on the 18th, just a week shy of the TPO board meeting. Mentioned last month, but for the purposes of again, just an overview of what the TIP document includes, some existing and new things, primarily a grouped and ungrouped projects that plan to be implemented in the 3-year period, the 4-year period, 21 to 24, and then delineating between grouped and ungrouped projects. The project status, and I talked about this last month and received comments as a result from a few members, and wanted to clarify. The project status column that we've added is based on information that we received for project allocations for specific projects, and it's based on information we received in March for all grouped and ungrouped projects. And so in looking at these, I looked at those projects that had received any monies, any federal monies, and that any obligations, and if they had not received any, then then for example that stage would not be, that phase would not be listed. So for example, if there were no project obligations for project X in the preliminary engineering phase, then I would have listed that as not started. In reality, that really does mean that it's in that first stage, but there hasn't been any monies obligated to it. So and that's the distinction, because I know that there were some comments that are received that indicated, well, we're in the PE phase. So that's the rationale there. We talked about the TIPS amendment and adjustment process, STBG and TA funding processes, and then added related documents in the appendices. We put some smart scale projects with no federal funding that were regionally significant in the other project section at the end. The public input survey results, as we mentioned, are in the appendix, and then we removed a basic guide to the Transportation Improvement Program and from the appendix, and that'll be available when it's revamped on the website. So as mentioned, we did receive some comments, and we're able to address a good portion of them, and have reached out to a couple of you all to indicate the ability to make those comments, and some of those were not able to address. And if we've got, I guess, any other comments, our request here is we recommend, staff does, to you all to forward this draft FY21-24 TIP to the policy board at their public hearing and meeting on the 25th.
All right. Any? Oh. Thank you, Brian. And I'm not sure why I'm getting feedback. Any questions on his presentation on the tip?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
On the tip, thank you. I noticed that there were 3 instances with county projects where you had double listings, because there's a request for STBG funds and a request for smart scale funds.
Mm-hmm.
While it's 2 funding requests for the same project, does it need to be 2 separate lines, 2 separate rows for each project?
Not necessarily. That could be combined into one, just to reflect that they are candidate projects for both. That could easily be consolidated. Sure.
That was the instance with Valley Point Parkway and 419 Phase 2. And then there's also 2 rows for Starkey Road, Buck Mountain, which has previously funded with other sources, but then we've asked for smart scale funds on top of it. So there's 2 rows for that one as well.
Okay.
There's also, I had a couple minor comments, but one, I called out that the Dugoods Lane Bridge Rehab Project, that's a state of good repair project of VDOT's. That's one of them that's on our 6-year plan list, but it wasn't included. So I don't really care one way or the other because it's VDOT's project, but since it's on our list and it's fairly significant, I thought you might want to include that one. And I sent you information on that.
Right, and I'm trying to recall the rationale. Was there any revenue sharing on that?
No, it's state of good repair.
Just state of good repair. Okay. All right. I'll go take a look at that again, and we'll add it.
Thank you.
Sure.
And you made the remark about indicating what phase projects are in by the allocations. The 119-220 DDI is in the PE phase, and the kickoff was last September, I believe. So again, it's a minor detail, but that one is definitely in the PE phase. The Plantation Road Streetscape Improvements Project is complete, but it used to be 2 different rows because it has 2 UPCs. And I saw that 103-607, which is the RSTP funding, was removed, but 98-220, which is revenue sharing, is still there. So again, it's done. So I don't even know if it has to be in the tip because it's complete, but since one was there, I figured the other should probably be there too. Right.
I agree. And as we receive the projects from VDOT, there are a significant number of projects that have been completed, and it's just a matter of either final closeout hasn't occurred or something that's just keeping it there in the system. But if that's a pure revenue sharing, if 98-220 is a pure revenue sharing project, I could remove that just by virtue of it being revenue sharing.
Then that would be fine too. And then both of them are gone and that project's done.
Okay, and those are both the Plantation Road ones?
Yes, Plantation Road Phase 1.
Okay.
Just 2 other small things. You've got enhancement listed at the bottom of the county list on the left-hand column. You've got 2 projects listed there that do not have enhancement funds. The 110155, which is the Roanoke River Greenway across the landfill, is flat funding. It's not enhancement. It's Federal Lands Access Program. And then Plantation Phase 2 is entirely smart scale. So that's not enhancement either. But those are just minor edits.
Okay.
I emailed these to you earlier today. I'm sorry it wasn't more in advance.
Oh, sure. And a question to Mr. Chair, a question to Mr. Gray. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. If it has enhancement beside it, does that necessarily mean that it's TA, or does that mean that it's an enhancement in that grouping, the enhancement beautification grouping? And it remains a mystery.
Michael, you're muted if you're talking.
But the point of my question, Megan, was that there appeared to me to be several projects that were not TA funded projects, but yet were considered enhancements under that grouped category, and that was what I was seeking a clarification for.
Again, it's a minor detail. I just not knowing the definition, I thought I'd offer that up.
Sure, and thank you, and that's a very intuitive observation.
Well, and I thank you. It's a lot of work to keep all of these projects straight amongst all these jurisdictions. So it's a massive task.
Any other question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say that that I'll be happy to make any and all corrections and revisions, especially those that have been mentioned thus far. And if anyone else has any comments, we'll address those as well.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions by the other membership?
This is Liz. On page 14, the city's project, Roanoke River Greenway 105439, they have spent the money, but the termini that are listed were not achieved. So they didn't get all the way to Bridge Street. And I mean, it's not a big issue. They have spent the money. They have completed that portion of the project, but it is possible that they might come back at some other time and ask for more money to get the piece done around Walker Foundry when they get that right away. So what they actually built was aerial way to the materials yard, and rather than all the way to Bridge Street.
Hey, this is Michael. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. It's freezing up my phone. I'm on my phone, and I was trying to get back to the page where I could, or the screen where I could turn it on, but it wouldn't allow me. Regarding the tip and the projects, moving projects around or taking them out because they're completed, I think that's the gist of some of the conversation here. You know, try to remember that when that document is initially developed, it's a snapshot in time. Anything that's happened since that time period or that day that it was done is not reflected in it. And we can get those reflected later on as we move through, you know, the year or 2 years or 3 years that this thing's going to be active. But I wouldn't sweat it too much in terms of if it's not exactly what it is today, we can get that changed later on. The other piece is I wouldn't remove projects until we get some confirmation from our end that it is closed out, because we don't want a project may be finished, but it might not be financially closed out. So we just need to keep that in mind. It's kind of a living document. Again, it's a snapshot in time when they first put that spreadsheet together of all the projects and project information.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is Anita.
Yes.
Michael, that's good to know, because we do have, I know Brian has corrected the time project, but as far as under appendix, I was told that only VDOT can revise those projects. I appreciate that clarification.
Yes.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else for Brian? All right. Hearing none, would entertain a motion. And I would say before we do the motion, Brian, are you comfortable with the comments from Megan and Michael that would we need to spell those out in the motion, or are you comfortable with handling them?
I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair. I'm comfortable with handling them. As Megan mentioned, I did receive an email from her itemizing the comments, so I feel confident with being able to address those without specifically itemizing them.
All right, excellent. All right, so does anyone have a motion for us?
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion to approve the tip. Megan Cronice.
All right. I would make a slight modification to that motion, if you don't mind, Megan, for recommending approval of the tip.
Recommending approval with corrections as noted during the meeting. Recommend the FY21 to F24 Transportation Improvement Program to the RBTPO Policy Board. And I can't see the rest of that text. With corrections as noted during the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. Do I hear a second from anyone?
Second.
Who was that? I didn't.
Anita.
Anita. Thank you. Megan was the motion and Anita was the second. Any comments or questions on the motion as presented? All right. Hearing none, Christina, take us through the roll.
Mariel Fowler,
Yes.
Peter Volleson,
Yes.
Cody Sexton,
Yes.
Dan Brew,
Yes.
Megan Cronice,
Yes.
Will Crawford,
Yes.
Chris Chittum,
Yes.
Mark Jamison,
Yes.
Ben Tripp,
Aye.
Nathan McClung,
Yes.
Anita McMillan,
Yes.
Liz Belcher,
Yes.
Nathan Sanford,
Yes.
Dan Sonnenklar,
Yes.
Michael Gray.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Brian, for your work on this, and I echo Megan's sentiments on keeping everything straight is a huge task from across all the localities. So thank you, and to everyone who gave you help as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Moving right along. Let me pull up the agenda again. That was number 5. Number 6, we're going to have a small set of presentations headed off by Christina or facilitated by Christina. The transportation impacts from COVID-19. So we have impacts on motor vehicle travel from VDOT, impacts on transit travel and operations from Valley Metro and Radar, and then non-motorized travel from ARVARC. So Christina, lead us off on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to just share with you some information. And of course, we're living in unprecedented times. Nobody could have ever anticipated the dramatic change in life that we would have experienced, especially none of us were thinking about it when we met back in February. But because of the pandemic, we've experienced significant impacts to transportation. And we thought it would be of interest to you to go through some of the different modes and just what they've been experiencing from the pandemic. And so, as Cody mentioned, we have VDOT, Valley Metro, Radar, and then Rachel will be presenting from RVRC on some just incredible data. So I will pass it over to Michael and bring up the slides.
All right.
All right, I'm trying to get to the page that shows, okay. And really this is more for information purposes than me really talking a whole lot about it. Mina Lockwood out of our traffic engineering division in Richmond has given several presentations. And gosh, I think that's probably, a 30-minute presentation regarding the impact of COVID-19 on traffic. And then our efforts to try to work with contractors to let them close roads or be on the road longer than anticipated when we originally set up some of these contracts. And then just the overall change in traffic over time, starting, in that kind of early March period. These graphs are developed just for, these aren't part of Mina's presentation, but they are developed specifically for our area. So it's Route or I-81, I-581, and Route 419. I wish I knew where mile marker 10 was on Route 419 because that's on there. I can't tell you right off the bat exactly where that is, but I'm assuming it's a little closer to the Tanglewood end than the other end. But as you can see with this information, there was a significant, very significant downturn in traffic in March and early April, and you can see it kind of stabilize and then start to work its way back. One of the things that is going to be hard to determine at this point, and I have a feeling it's going to be similar with the other conversations we're going to have with Valley Metro and Radar, are what exactly is going to happen in the future in terms of traffic volumes. Are we going to see more people potentially staying at home and working from the home environment, or are they going to be going back to offices? What exactly is that going to mean? I know at least at our office, we're, for the most part, unless you're a road crew, you're pretty much working from home at this point, and we do not have a clear plan of when we're going to get back in the office. But I know a lot of agencies and businesses are getting back into full swing, or at least potentially, closer to full swing. 50% occupancy, I believe, for restaurants and things like that. So we're seeing an uptick, as you can see in these graphs. We're seeing an uptick in the traffic volumes, and really, we just wanted to put it out there as here's some information we have right now, and kind of have it there for conversation more than anything else. Christina, I don't know if you downloaded it or are able to get it, but Mina's presentation that she's given a couple times, she actually gave it yesterday, and she's given it a couple other times as well. Is there a way to get that to the TTC members so they can actually see that? I wasn't sure if there was a way or not.
I'll look into it, Michael. I do have copies of her slides as they were, with a few other presentations, so I can try and just single hers out and share those with the TTC.
Yeah, but hers goes into much greater detail about kind of what's going on. What are some things we've been doing or dealing with as a state agency during this time? But as I said, you can see a significant downswing in traffic, but then you're starting to see an uptick headed back towards kind of normal. When and if you get to normal, I think is part of the question. So I don't have any answers for that, and I don't know that anybody else does at this time. But I think the discussion we're trying to have is worthwhile.
So Michael, I've got the slide from I-81 on the screen right now.
Okay.
Was there anything you wanted to speak to that one specifically? I can just also glance through the other two.
Yeah, I mean, they're all very similar if you look at them. So I'm not really going to talk about one location or anything. Okay. They're all just very similar in terms of you see a downturn, you see it kind of bottom out and go along that bottom for a little bit, and you're starting to see it tick back up. Like I said, I think the question on everybody's mind is when we're going to get back to what some people would consider normal, if we're going to get back to a normal. So I think that's from the planning side of things. What are we planning for in the future, and does COVID have an impact on what we do, or say the long range plan, or any of these other planning activities that we are getting into?
All right, thank you, Michael. And I think you're right about thinking through these impacts as we get into the long range plan development, and then it's certainly for our congestion management process as well. It's taken a whole nother turn here. So I'm going to pass it on to Dorian Allen from Valley Metro.
Hi, can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Awesome. So I just wanted to give an overall, not just ridership update, but management update to how we're dealing with COVID-19. Like you say, this is an unprecedented time. So we're finding ourselves having to make adjustments on the fly the best way we can. So I guess as an agency, as a whole, We want to prioritize the safety of not only our passengers, but our staff members as well. So Valley Metro has implemented a number of practices to, protect our passengers and our transit operators while continuing to provide as much capacity as to full capacity as possible. So first thing we did was we wanted to limit or increase the distance between our passengers and our operators. So we would close off the front seats of our buses to kind of have that distance in between our operators and our passengers. We suspended fare collection to suspend that interaction between the customers and the operators. So on March 27th, the collection of fares was suspended to eliminate passengers stopping at the fare box, which is adjacent to the bus operators. And that suspension will expire around June 30th. Also on April 9th, we limited the number of passengers to 9. We provided markers on the buses to indicate where passengers can and cannot sit. We have increased that passenger limit to 15 on June 10th. We wanted to create a flow of passengers from the front of the bus to the rear. We also placed signages on the bus to encourage behaviors as prescribed by the CDC, and provided the necessary PPE to staff. We also hired a number of bus cleaners during after hours to clean the buses as thoroughly as possible in between shifts and in between bus operations. So those are just some of the steps that we took to try to provide those safety measures for the passengers and the staff members as a whole. As you know, the CARES Act was signed into legislation on March the 27th. It provided $2 trillion to both businesses and services for economic relief, and it was to provide direct economic assistance for businesses, also including transit agencies. So Valley Metro has been allocated $1.8 million in CARES Act funding for fixed route services and $1.1 million for commuter services. It will be programmed during FY 2020 and FY 2021, and this funding will be used for planning, operating, and capital assistance. So as far as ridership, what we did was we compared the ridership from this year to the same time in the previous year in 2019, and as you can see, we've witnessed significant drops in our ridership. Of course, a lot of our ridership includes wage workers, workers in restaurants, small businesses, and as small businesses close, as restaurants close, so do their employees. Their employees are majorly affected by those closings. So as you can see, if you want to look at March, we saw a decrease in about 23% of our ridership, and that is when the fare-free policy was implemented at the time. But we really see significant drops in ridership around April and May, mostly where the COVID-19 and information regarding COVID-19 was really, out there, and people were digesting such information and taking major precautions. Around April, where we implemented the 9-passenger limit, we saw a 45% drop in our ridership, and we continue to see a drop in our ridership in the month of May, in about 50%. So, whereas last year our daily ridership was around 6,000, 6,500 riders a day, or trips a day, now we're seeing about 3,000 to 3,500 trips a day. You will see spikes some days, mainly on the first of the month, where a lot of people get assistance, checks and whatever, and their activity increases during that time. But on average, we're seeing about 3,000 to 3,500 riders or trips a day. So we're really seeing a lot of decrease in the ridership. At this moment in time, we're planning towards how do we limit the customer interaction between customers and the drivers, maybe going to more of a smartphone approach to how we collect fares. And then also just how do we keep I guess, a sense of cleanliness on the buses in terms of, like I said, hiring bus cleaners, operators to also take the due diligence to cleaning their buses as well. So we're planning on that front. But as you can see, we're seeing significant drops in our ridership. Hopefully in the near months, near future, as we see restaurants and other small businesses opening up, we'll see increases in ridership. But right now we continue to see a drop.
All right.
And this ridership information, this does not include the Starline trolley. So these are just these are our fixed route as well as our commuter buses.
Thank you, Dorian. I appreciate you sharing the information about Valley Metro, and we will move on to Nathan Sanford at Radar.
Thank you for the opportunity to let you guys know what's going on over at Radar. You're going to hear a lot of things that Dorian just said because we're going through similar situations just on a smaller scale. First thing to point out is we did have some surface and safety effects. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So we're a coordinated transportation system. It means we have contracts and service agreements with lots of different agencies. We do provide the complimentary paratransit for Valley Metro through a contract for the STAR program. We run a lot of different services. As soon as schools were closed, Roanoke City schools were closed for the year, our tap head chart shuttles, they ceased operation. We run a deviated fixed route for Ferrum. That went down when Ferrum ended their spring semester. We run a deviated fixed route in Lexington, Rockbridge County, and Buena Vista. And we had the entire workforce there afraid to continue to work. So we were down for a couple months. Today's actually our first day back in service there. We had additional drops just because demand went down. A lot of places were closed. We were only allowed to really do essential trips. A lot of our passengers were fearful about catching the virus. So that contributed to a decrease in the amount of trips. And of course, we require distancing just like Valley Metro did on all of our fixed routes where there's only a certain number of passengers that can be on the vehicle safely at any one time. Some safety things, again, this will seem pretty common based on things that Dorian said, but as soon as we were able to, we got some personal protective equipment for frontline staff like operators, dispatchers, and maintenance that include gloves, masks, and face shields. An increase in the amount of cleaning supplies on the vehicles and in terms of the cleaning protocol. So operators are now cleaning the vehicles in between trips. And then also we are rerouting some of our general cleaning focus of the exterior of the vehicles to the interior and high touch points such that at the end of the day, we have a cleaning crew just like Valley Metro does coming in and completely disinfecting the interior of the vehicle so they're ready to roll for the next operating day. Following some recommendations from FTA and from the governor's office, we have procured enough masks that we can provide them for our clients if they do not have one. And then we're also looking to install operator barriers that cuts down on any sort of interaction between the operators and the clients as they get on the bus. Just like Valley Metro, we've had significant ridership impact. Starting off with showing you fiscal 19, just to give you sort of a clean picture of what a normal year looks like at Radar. So, you know, most months we're somewhere in that 16,000 to 20,000. We go down in the summer when Tap Head Start is not running, but you know, you can see the 3-month rolling averages there. We're pretty stable over the year. But then if you go to the next slide and look at what we're doing in 20, with the data we have so far, we're hanging on pretty good through the beginning of March, and then you see the precipitous decline there in April and May, where we have some services shut down, and then there's just demand itself has completely fallen off the cliff. Just like Valley Metro, we also were able to take advantage of some funding opportunities to keep us in business. So first of that was just a small piece of emergency operating assistance from Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. They had some rollover funds that were able to give us operating assistance for about a typical month for us. We're taking advantage of payroll tax credits through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act for any employee leave related to COVID-19. We are lucky we have not had any staff members test positive, but we have had to quarantine some operators based on the fact that they did transport clients who then we found out later did test positive. We were able to secure a Paycheck Protection Program loan that's potentially forgivable to assist with immediate payroll, utilities, and health insurance premium needs. This is crucial for us because we were able to keep nearly all of our staff on payroll with some minimum amount of income, even if they weren't able to work or if there wasn't any work for them to perform. And then finally, just like Valley Metro, we received some funding through the CARES Act for transportation funding through our 5311 Rural Public Transportation Program that'll cover operating expenses and any sort of pandemic-related non-operating expenses like extra supplies. We've purchased some additional cleaning equipment. We're throwing more labor at cleaning the vehicles. And then most crucially, again, is being able to pay some of our staff paid admin leave when there isn't any work for them to do. We can continue to keep them on the books so that we don't have to scramble and rehire a bunch of folks once we get back to some more typical service level. And the nice part about this is it's about 2 years more than we would get, 2 years worth of funding than we would normally get. And there's not an expiration date on it. And it's 100% federal when typical operating funds require a state and a local match. So that's going to help our local partners or localities around the valley because they won't have to pay any match here for the next probably year or two. And I'm happy to take any questions, or you can email me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I think we'll go to Rachel and then we can take questions at the end.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So we have a little bit different story to tell than what you've heard. The Regional Commission has been counts people who walk and bike, and we're now counting on roads and sidewalks as well as the greenways and trails. So because we have this count program, we're able to answer some of these questions like what's happening to downtown Roanoke now with everything being closed down? Does that match what's happening in other places? What's happening on the Greenway, and how has that changed as the city closed and then reopened its greenways? So we have been able to expand our count program from the greenways to roads and sidewalks because of some equipment that is on loan from Virginia Tech and from VDOT. One of the things that really came out, we've had counters on Campbell Avenue in downtown Roanoke since July, and the first thing we noticed was this weekly heartbeat pattern with a low on Sunday and a peak every Friday or Saturday, and then certain events really pop out. So you could see the Dickens Christmas, we had about twice as many people. We normally had about on average 1,670 people walk past one of the two counters that we have there. And that day, on those days of the Dickens Christmas, we had about twice that. Well, of course, St. Patrick's Day really popped out. Even though the parade was canceled, we still had almost 7,000 people walk past one of those two counters that day. Next one. So what happened then during the pandemic? Well, this upper left graph shows the average hourly traffic that we see on Campbell Avenue, and the blue line is the month before everything started shutting down, and the orange line was the second week after everything had shut down. So normally activity is very high in downtown throughout the day. Nightlife goes to about 2 a.m. There's a very prominent lunch peak. But once everything had shut down, that lunch peak is all but abolished. It's still there, as people are still getting takeout. And you can start to see the morning and the evening peaks start peeking through. Traffic is down across the board, and the nightlife ends at about 9 p.m. But is that what happened in other places? Well, we happened to have a counter in downtown Benton at the same time, so we were able to make the same graph, even though the traffic there is 26 people per day on average rather than 1,670. And what we saw is that there was no difference. The pattern of traffic during the pandemic is almost identical to what was happening before. So the same 4 people are still walking past those counters at about 9 a.m. every single day. We saw the same thing on 10th Street and on Ogden Road, where we happened to have counters out, but there was just no change in the traffic patterns. So you can see that pedestrian activity in downtown Roanoke is really driven by having office buildings and people walking to lunch. Retail has a big effect, and the events really come out. But the pandemic didn't affect sidewalk activity elsewhere. And then we'll go on to our greenways. So what's happening on our greenways? Well, obviously River's Edge is really, really impressive with 2,230 people on Saturday, March 21st. And we picked this day to look at because that was the 6th highest number of people we have ever seen at that counter and we've been counting there for 10 years. I want to mention that Amanda and Matt handle the Greenway Count program, and I'm focused more on the on-road count program. So this is a joint effort. One thing I want to mention about that 2,000 number at River's Edge is in Richmond, because we have this partnership with VDOT, I'm able to look at counts at other places around the state, and I could see that at Richmond, the busiest spot on their busiest paved trail, the Capitol Trail, got about 2,000 people that day as well. So, and the traffic on that trail looks pretty similar to what we see at River's Edge. So that really made an impression on me that the busiest spot on Richmond's busiest paved trail is as busy as the busiest spot on our busiest greenway. But counts were up across the valley at all of the sites that we count, about 200%. Hanging Rock saw more of a 300% increase. So next slide. So that's kind of the opposite story of what you've been hearing of traffic being down. On greenways, traffic is up. And so to drill down a little more into what was going on at River's Edge on that Saturday and give you a sense of what that might have felt like, about 2,000 people, depending on how that spread across the day, that might not be so impressive. You know, it might not look so crowded, or it might look very crowded. So the counter that we have at River's Edge can go down to 1 hour increments. And so on that day, at the busiest hour at 3 p.m., we saw 272 people in that hour. But we have a counter just down the Greenway on Memorial Avenue that can go to 15-minute increments. And so the highest 15-minute increment that day had 34 people. Now Memorial Avenue on that day got about 1/3 the traffic that River's Edge got. So that potentially means that River's Edge had maybe 100 people in 15 minutes. So that maybe can give you a better sense of just what that might have felt like or looked like on that day. Next slide. So now this is we have data from 4 of the counters on the Roanoke River, starting from Green Hill Park on the west to River's Edge, kind of in the middle. And you can see that traffic started to go up at the beginning of March as everything started shutting down. And then the city closed the greenways because of concerns about crowding. And you could see the red line traffic really dropped off, not quite to zero, but it certainly solved the crowding issue. And then the greenways reopened, and you started to see traffic come back up, but then there was a flood. We actually had to take our counter out because it would have drowned. And when we were able to get the counter put back, it was just a few days ago, we're starting to see the traffic come up again. So what does that mean for the greenways? Well, River's Edge is really crowded. People flocked to the greenways when everything else got canceled, and that closing the greenway did effectively deter greenway use. But not entirely. So if you needed to actually prohibit all use of the greenway, that would be very difficult. But if you're just needing to, as they did, handle this crowding issue, then it was effective. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Rachel, Nathan, Dorian, and Michael for sharing information about each of these modes. I'm sure everyone found it just as interesting as I did, just to see these incredible drops in traffic. I thought one point that I hadn't really thought about before was when Rachel showed the data for St. Patty's Day. And she mentioned, I think, that there were maybe 7,000 folks that were in downtown Roanoke for the celebrations then, even though we were starting to see pandemics start rolling out. And then Dorian mentioned that that number is close to what Valley Metro handles in terms of trips on a daily basis. I hadn't ever thought about it in that sense, because certainly anytime I've been down to the St. Patty's Day events, it's always been incredibly crowded. And so to consider, the correlation, that helps to put in perspective a visual in terms of numbers. And I'm very happy to share with you the BDOT information from their central office traffic engineering folks, because that too will give you a broader perspective statewide on just the declines that we've seen. And that honestly, even just the crash numbers have gone down. So there's one positive from the pandemic. So at this time, we're happy to entertain any other comments or observations that any of the members want to share after hearing the presentations.
Christina, this is Janet Scheid.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. I was wondering if you could put up the ridership slide again for radar. And I wanted to see if we could get some clarification on something that was said at the very end of the presentation about the localities and a match.
Okay, I'll bring that right back up. Is this the slide of the FY20?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And then what was the information that was presented at the very end, something about a locality match?
So yeah, this is Nathan. I'll clarify that for you. The CARES Act funding that we received from FTA through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation is for our 5311 operating. So it's for our rural programs. So I think we have 5 of them. And so the operating assistance that we received will then make it so that when we use these CARES Act funds for those operations, it will be paid 100% at the federal level with that CARES Act funding, as opposed to the way it's currently constituted is it's like 50% federal, some changing from the state, and then the rest usually falls to the localities. But this is typically, you're only really going to see the benefits for our rural program. So Roanoke County is going to get a little bit of a benefit. And then our more far-flung services in Martinsville, Lexington, and Allegheny County will see some benefit. But it's for rural programs, not really anything in the urbanized area.
That wouldn't affect Vinton at all.
I don't believe so, no.
And you don't have to use those CARES funds by the end of this year?
No, they're designated to, we've been told they don't have an expiration date, although our contract does say something about March 2022 or something like that.
All right, that's interesting. The town has been told they have to be used by the end of December.
Is that transportation funding, or is it just a different version of CARES Act funding?
I guess a different program under the CARES Act. Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Cody. I have a quick question for Nathan while you're talking. You noted installing sort of shields or guards or partitions of some sort between the riders and the drivers in your vehicles. We were looking into that. Has any safety concerns been raised with that? I know we had some folks when people ask about installing sort of aftermarket barriers in the cars that could create a safety hazard for the passengers in the instance of a wreck.
Yeah, that's absolutely something we're looking at. So right now we're kind of in the prototyping phase where we're trying to make something here in-house. We have our own maintenance staff and they don't really have a lot to do right now. So this is a good project for them to work on and keep them busy. What I've seen that they've come up with so far is a mechanism almost like a public restroom stall door where you have the capacity to open it and close it, but for the most part, it's going to stay locked while in use. So if there is an accident, it's not like it's a permanently affixed barrier. It's something that it's on a hinge and that you can swing out and move it as you need to.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments for any of the folks who presented?
Mr. Chair, I had a question for Dorian and Nathan. Guys, have you all noticed any issue with or resistance by any passengers to the governor's mandate for protective face coverings? And how do your drivers approach folks that may get on that do not have such?
On the driver's end, we've definitely seen an acceptance to wearing face coverings. Of course, we'll get complaints like, oh, maybe it's a little uncomfortable here, a little uncomfortable there, but nothing major in terms of our drivers. In terms of people that are getting on the bus, the most I've heard is just we've been really hammering home the importance of wearing masks and protective equipment to our customers, and we haven't really gotten a lot of complaints about wearing masks on the bus. I mean, honestly, our customers are just as concerned as anyone else about riding the bus given COVID-19 revelation. So I mean, we haven't really gotten a lot of complaints on that respect.
And I guess as a follow-up to that, had there been any responses of, well, I don't have a mask or can't, if it's an affordability issue? Have there been any issues like that?
We also reiterate that any kind of face coverings or most face coverings are acceptable, whether it be a shirt, whether it be any kind of tourniquet, rag, anything of that nature. We also kind of hammer home that most face coverings will suffice. So,
okay.
Yeah, in terms of affordability, people are going to find a way to, like I said, people are just as fearful as our customers are just as fearful as anyone else. So they're going to find whatever face coverings they can to be able to protect themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on that. We're in a similar boat, but we're a little bit lucky either that we don't deal with as many unique individuals on a monthly basis. So it's not as burdensome for us to provide a mask for someone who doesn't have it already. I'll say generally, Dorian's right. People are afraid, and to the point where I think public transportation long-term is going to have a safety problem in terms of the perception of safety going forward until there is a vaccine. I read in the New York Times last week that when they reopened the New York Stock Exchange, one of the requirements for gaining entry to the stock exchange was that you did not use public transportation. So there's a perception that public transportation, fairly or not, is not a safe way to get around. So we have had instances where people have refused masks. We interpreted the governor's executive order as meaning strongly recommended because it didn't really seem like there was any way to enforce it. And we certainly don't want our operators in a position where they have to enforce that particular policy. We just strongly recommend it. Someone can get on a vehicle and say, I have a medical reason not to use a mask, and then we can't really do anything else about it except transport them.
Right. We're running into similar type situations, and it's, in a way, it's good to hear the same thing, but as unfortunate as it may be. Thank you both.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to the presenters, to Nathan, to Dorian, to Michael, and to Rachel for presenting. Thank you, Christina, for gathering them together and for having them present this. I know lots of this information is really big and really important to a lot of our decision making and our thinking, and I just look forward to hearing more of it and maybe in a couple months, we can have a quick update to sort of see what the trends have been after a summer of going through all this. So thank you all once again. Moving right along, the next item is other business. Any other business from the members? All right, hearing none. Any comments from the public or comments from the membership?
Mr. Chairman, this is Janet Scheid.
Yes.
And I'd just like to say thank you for allowing me to sit in on these meetings over the last several years. At the end of June, I will be going off the TPO, as I will be going off town council also. But I've enjoyed participating and learning about the TTC and appreciate your hard work and every member of the TTC's hard work and staff's hard work.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that. I know having that tighter connection with the TPO and having you sit in has been beneficial times throughout this process. So I hope you encourage your successor to do the same.
I will try.
And best of luck if you plan on leading a non-political life after June 30th.
I do.
All right, well, thank you so much. Any other last minute comments from anyone?
Yeah, sure. This is Dorian one more time. So just for your information, we have a Transit Transfer Center public meeting. This is to review information on the Transit Transfer Center. This is going to be scheduled for Thursday, June 18th from 4:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. at Campbell Court on the second floor. This will be an open house format where stakeholders can review and comment on the location of the building, conceptual renderings of the building, information on building appearances, and information on temporary facilities. So once again, that is a Transit Transfer Center public meeting on June 18th, 4:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. at Campbell Court on the second floor.
All right, thank you so much, Dorian. I know that's a huge topic of discussion, not just in the city, but throughout the entire region. So thank you for making us aware of that. So thank you all once again. Look forward to the TPO meeting in a couple weeks. Look forward to the July meeting coming up, and I hope you all have a safe and wonderful summer. And let it be noted that we are adjourning 9 minutes early. So for all those long meetings, we're making up the time. So thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Cody.